Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Star Wars. Say what? We're back, baby, with some more Star Wars content. I'm your host, Mucky Hope, and today I'm joined by a very special friend. You know, I met him all the way back in 2020. I just hit the wall. I met him all the way back in 2020 when COVID was first starting. He inspires me to be a filmmaker. His own films are 10 out of 10 class. And I'm pretty sure where you shot parts of your film, Everett, I live exactly right there.
It's quite possible.
Yeah, sort of at the top of Queen Street.
Yeah, right around there is where we were.
Yeah, now, when I was choosing this apartment, I was like, Everett shot here, so I have to move into this one apartment. That was the only reason why I'm in my apartment today. But it is my dear close friend, Everett. How are you, man?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. You know, I was actually thinking for our Ahsoka review, I really wanted to have you on, but we tend to disagree on a lot of things about Star Wars, Everett, and I want it to be more positive than negative. But you know, we're here now. You know, we can discuss all the negative. We can argue back and forth like we do in our text conversations. I guess let's just start off. Like, what is your relationship with Star Wars? How did you get into the franchise? And
so when I was, I don't know, 6 years old or so, my neighbor had the original, episode 4, and he had me over and his son, and we watched it. And from that moment on, it has been an obsession of mine. And I have loved it ever since. I've watched just about everything they've put out. However, I would say somewhere around episode 9 and the live action TV shows, I have become one of those grumpy Star Wars fans who's fallen a little out of love with the franchise and what they've been doing. I watch everything because I keep hoping that, this next project, that'll be the one that gets me fully back on board. But yeah, I'm still there. I'm hoping. I'm in Dave Filoni we trust, but it's been a little rocky for me.
Well, there's that saying: if it ain't Filoni, it ain't for me, or for me. Yeah, it rhymes, right?
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, like, kind of similar to you, I also got into Star Wars very much as a young kid, and I feel like Star Wars is one of those very few franchises where you see the name pop up and your inner child sort of comes out, right? It doesn't matter how old you are. If you see something Star Wars themed, you're immediately in love with it, you know.
I hear the music anywhere, I just instantly get excited.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it was a few nights ago, my neighbor was playing the Duel of Fates or something, and I could hear it through the walls, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is epic. They're watching a Darth Maul fight scene, like, this is epic, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just sat there in silence listening to it, just reminiscing.
I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, something you brought up was about, you know, the sequel trilogy and all the different live action shows. I guess we'll start off with the sequel films because those were the first main 3 projects that Disney Stars came out with. What's your thoughts across the 3 movies from Force Awakens to The Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, so I saw The Force Awakens 10 times in theaters because I was so excited Star Wars was back. And that's not an exaggeration. I genuinely went 10 times. And in the first couple months it was out, it was the greatest thing that had ever come to exist. And then, you had a little bit of a break as you were getting ready for episode 8, and I rewatched it and I was like, wow, this really is just episode 4 again. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for rebooting the trilogy, play it safe for the first one. And then episode 8, I am a big fan of it. I think it has some really dumb moments, but has some of the best Star Wars that's out there.
Really?
Really.
Like,
I
what sort of stuff is the best Star Wars in your
Yeah,
opinion?
I love the hyperspace cutting through the ship moment.
Yeah,
I think that is
true.
awesome and so well done. I also really love where they went with Luke's character. I think it makes perfect sense. Controversial opinion, but
Oh my
maybe it's
gosh.
because 'cause I'm grumpy myself that I identify with the grumpy Luke Skywalker. But
Yeah, it's quite weird with how they handled the original trilogy characters, especially with Princess Leia, because Carrie Fisher, she passed away during the filming of Episode 8, but they never killed off a character till the end of the last film. So obviously, they CGI'd her in and stuff, and obviously with AI technology, it's quite easy to do all that stuff. But I personally think that the original trilogy has got a special place in everyone's hearts because that's like the OG Star Wars. I personally feel like it has the perfect trilogy format,
yeah.
and but I feel like they really dimmed down on a lot of characters. Like, they killed off Han Solo, but to be fair, Harrison Ford would have done anything to be killed off in
Yeah,
Star
yeah,
Wars.
that one's an asterisk because
Yeah,
Harrison Ford did not wanna be there.
yeah. But I think with Luke, and I've seen this, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Luke sees Darth Vader, which at that point in time was probably one of the most evilest people in the galaxy, apart from the Emperor. But he sees the good in him, right? Despite him chopping off his hand, right? He still sees the good man that Anakin is, but then he sees his own nephew having some dark thoughts, and he's like, "Nah, this guy got to die," And what's your so with Luke's character? Why do you think that change was
Yeah,
like for
so for
people? Yeah,
me, it worked in that I see it more as he saw the good in Darth Vader and he thinks he's won and they've finally been successful. And years later, he's supposed to just be kind of enjoying teaching, relaxing on a beach
mm,
somewhere. And suddenly the First Order is becoming a thing. And he starts to see the evil in his nephew and what's coming, and he just feels hopeless. Like, wow, even after all of this and being able to redeem Darth Vader, it meant nothing because we're going to end up right back where we were. And to me, there's nothing more frustrating than that. When you've done the best job you can, and then you find out it meant nothing and everything's just
yeah.
going back to the way it was, that would make me so mad and frustrated and just cut myself off and go away to a remote island and hang out with little birds and milk weird creatures.
Is that what you did after Max's final project at South Seas?
Maybe that's why I went back to America. I was just
Yeah. Even I was
I
done
felt
after
hopeless, so might as well just live in the hopelessness.
that. um, when you bring that part up, it actually does kind of make sense, right? Because I guess Luke has always been like the whole idea of him is that he is like this hero, like he sees the good and stuff. But that definitely does make sense that like he did everything to stop like all the evil and whatnot, but then he sees it all starting back up again. And there's something that Balin even said in episode 6 of Ahsoka, which I found fascinating. So he wants to start a new order, but not just any order, because he sees the pattern over and over again, with the rise
Mhm.
of the Republic and then the fall of the Jedi, rise of Empire, rise of the rebellion, fall of the Empire, and slowly starting to happen again with the First Order. And yeah, I've I've actually completely done a 180 on Luke now because of because of you, Everett. You've actually changed my
Perfect,
opinion.
that's what we're here to do.
But
Make you a
you know,
grumpy Star Wars fan.
yeah. But you said Force Awakens is like a ripoff of A New Hope. The Last Jedi is a great film. What's your take on the Rise of Skywalker?
I refuse to watch it ever again. I have seen it once in theaters. I left feeling emotionless about 2 hours after I watched it. I just laid in my bed and cried because Star Wars was dead to me, and it hurt my soul that they could do that to something I love so much.
Yeah.
Um, I I really, really hate that movie, and not just from a Star Wars standpoint of it didn't hit my Star Wars expectations. It didn't hit my basic standards of what a movie should be.
Mm,
Like, there are basic criteria of how a plot should flow and structure, and, you know, action and consequence and all of this, and that movie fails on all accounts.
Yeah, there
And
were.
so
Oh, after you.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because the Rise of Skywalker, because I remember specifically, I was watching it with one of my best mates, Nathan. You've actually chatted to Nathan at one point over the phone, and his dad, and it was the premiere night, but we're still the only 3 people in the movie cinema, which was pretty funny. And I recall that there were 2 moments in the film that really got me. I was like, that is actually fantastic. And it was when Rey shot lightning out of her hand to destroy the ship that Chewbacca was on. I was like, that is such a shocking, sad death scene for Chewbacca. But then it turns out he was fine. He was on a different ship. So that was kind of ruined. And then the moment with C-3PO where he had to wipe his memory. I forgot exactly what for, but, you know, to help the cause. I was like, you know, that's actually kind of sad. But then it was fine because they rebooted his memory at the end anyways. And so
Yeah.
it was a terrible film. I completely agree. And
Yeah.
it has...
But I think that being said, like, I do really like Daisy Ridley as Rey, Oscar Isaacs as Poe, Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. Like, I think they were the correct cast, the correct characters to take the movies forward. There is a world in which there is a phenomenal sequel trilogy starring those characters played by those people. But I think the backlash to episode 8 scared Disney. So you could see it with them firing literally everyone who'd been working for years on episode 9 and then just pulling in J.J. Abrams to throw something together and still hit their release date. And it just feels like J.J. Abrams was there, made episode 7. Ryan Johnson comes in and goes, "Oh, I don't like this. I'm going to throw everything you did out and rip it all up and start again." And then J.J. Abrams comes back and is like, "Oh, you ripped up everything? Yeah, well, I'll rip up everything you did," and then undoes all of that. And so it just feels like a petty squabble across 3 movies instead of a cohesive trilogy.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point because I feel like the actors did nothing wrong. I know that the actors do get quite a bit of hate, you know, because it's much easier to hate on the actors than it
Yeah,
is
it's who
on
you're
the director
seeing.
or producers. Yeah, exactly. But even in interviews, you know, that all the actors have had, I think Daisy Ridley even said she had no idea that she was the Emperor's like granddaughter or something till like halfway through filming the last movie.
Yeah.
And that's just bad.
That's because they didn't know until halfway through. And they're like, "Oh, what can we do? Oh, the Emperor's kicking around somewhere if we want. So let's just pull him back."
It's kind of similar to how the Hobbit trilogy was made. I recently watched Mr. Sunday movies.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they covered the Hobbit trilogy, and something that they said, which I had no idea about, is that apparently the making of the Hobbit trilogy was described as laying train tracks as the train is going. Like you don't know, they had no idea where they were going. They're just hoping that they were just gonna arrive at a good destination.
Behind the scenes clips of like hundreds of people in orc makeup just sitting around waiting because they're still writing what they were supposed to shoot that day.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
and they would just
gosh.
like they would show up to do like a battle scene and no one has a script, and so they just get in costume, film some generic stuff, and then they all just sit around and wait and hope the writers get something made that day to film it. It was a mess. But that's another podcast.
Yeah, that's definitely another podcast. But yeah, so I'm someone who loved Force Awakens, even though it was kind of similar to A New Hope. The Force Awakens was the first Star Wars movie I ever got to see in movie cinema. So I guess similar to you, I had that Star Wars is back, baby.
Yeah.
Last Jedi, I liked some elements of it, but I think, you know, they added in a completely third storyline with Finn and what was that girl's name?
Oh my gosh.
But
wow.
like there was like whole like it was really bad. They had like a whole like animal rights like type scene as well when they snuck into like First Order planet. And it was just so sad to see that Finn was like probably the main character in The Force Awakens, and then he got like barely anything in The Last Jedi, and then pretty much nothing in The Rise of Skywalker. Like they really did start to focus on Rey, which I personally don't hate Rey. I think my only issue with her is that there was no character growth or story for her.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned on our last podcast we did, like, you know, Anakin, he like throughout attack the clones, you know, he loses to Count Dooku, he gets captured easily and stuff, he loses his mother. Luke, like, he quite literally loses everything. He's training under Yoda and he can't use the Force properly, but he still rushes to fight Darth Vader. Rey wins every single fight that she has.
Yeah.
And never loses. And so it's hard to like a character who, yeah, is just, look at me, I'm the best all the time.
Yeah. I think there is a version again of this trilogy, if it was made competently, in
Mm,
which they push back at Ryan Johnson, because while I do like episode 8 is my favorite of the sequel trilogy, I agree with you, like the Finn stuff, irrelevant. Ray just kind of comes out of nowhere and wins everything. Like, I think there's a version of that movie where you said, "Oh no, hold on. This is what we did in the last one, and this is where we want to go with these characters. So we need these things to happen instead of just letting him do whatever he wants."
yeah,
And then that whatever happens in that movie, again, she lost Han Solo in the first movie. She finally gets a master in Luke. She loses him. And maybe instead it's like she's trying to get there to save, she thinks like Luke is there or whatever, and she's going to try and save him against Kylo Ren, and then realizes he wasn't even there and she's failed, and he had to give up his life to be able to save them or something because she failed. But
yeah,
his last act is saving them, and now she's again without a mentor, kind of like Luke was, a
mm,
bit lost, having just lost to Kylo Ren and barely escaped. Um,
yeah,
and then episode 9 is her finally reconciling with all of that. It's a far
yeah,
more interesting trilogy.
yeah, yeah, definitely,
But
definitely. But, you know, we've talked enough about the sequels. Let's talk about some of the live action shows they've
mhm.
done. So quite famously, I think probably the number one live action show, despite the third season being absolutely crap in my opinion, is The Mandalorian. What's been your thoughts across the Mandalorian series?
Yeah, I have never been a huge Mandalorian show fan. I think it's always struggled. It wants to be a monster of the week adventure, but it
Mm,
also wants to have profound impact on the Star Wars universe, and it doesn't strike that balance super well to me.
yeah,
And I think if it was just the Mandalorian and Grogu bouncing around from planet to planet, just capturing bounties, it's a much more engaging show. Or throw out the kind of monster a week where every episode is a whole new planet, world, mission, and just actually make a cohesive drama about this bounty hunter and force sensitive child figuring out all these mysteries and stuff, but it gets caught in between them.
yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, I don't hate the Mandalorian. I don't love the Mandalorian. Um, it's just kind of there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like season one, I was pretty mid on. I know a lot of people really loved the first season. I think my favorite episode is definitely the one that Taika Waititi had directed because I just
Okay.
can't get over that stormtrooper scene where they keep punching Grogu and they keep, you know, trying to shoot the rock, but they keep missing. And one of my favorite jokes, probably my favorite joke in all of Star Wars, is that, you know, quite often with, you know, bad guys like General Grievous famously, you know, like they keep killing their own troopers for like no reason.
Hmm.
And you know they're waiting for someone to come and pick up Grogu. They're like, so what's the ETA? Oh, sorry, it's going to be a bit delayed because Moff Gideon just killed another 3 guys who's still trying to trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really funny. But Mandalorian season 2. I'm not sure about you, Everett, but for me, this season was like it definitely made me like come back to being a massive Star Wars fan again, and I had a lot of really cool moments. But what was your
Hmm.
overall thoughts on season 2?
Yeah, I think season 2, I don't know if it's just that I didn't really buy the rivalry with Moff Gideon or what, but it
Mm,
just kind of fell flat. it wanted to be more profound than it was to me. And yeah, it also just it felt it felt kind of like a filler season. They had like 3 or 4 good ideas. They're like, "Yeah, this is what season 2 is gonna be." And then they're like, "Wait, but we've got more than 4 episodes to make. So we'll
Yeah.
just kinda add a few checkpoints he's gotta go collect along the way." And so again, yeah, it's a mixed bag for me as with all the Mandalorian stuff. It looks great. It's,
Yeah.
well made. Um, but yeah, I think it just kind of lacks that drive of knowing this is where we're going. This is what we want to accomplish. We've got to get these pieces here for a reason. It feels more like, oh, we're going to get here, but we got to just kind of stall for 2
Mm.
episodes as we get there.
Yeah, definitely. Because overall, the story of this season was okay. I need to get Grogu to like someone else who's force sensitive, right? Because he can't really look after
Mhm.
Grogu. And I mean, the first episode, I loved the first episode where he's working with the Tuscans
Yeah.
against like that dragon. I thought that was fantastic. Like visually looked epic. You've got Cobb Vanth, who's like wearing the Boba Fett armor, and I thought that was like quite interesting to introduce him as a character there. He shows up in the Boba Fett show as well. But also, I feel like this show did something that I feel like a lot of movies and other shows, especially like with Marvel as well, tend to not do as well. And that's to perfectly master a cameo from a big
Okay.
character. So
Yeah.
where does Ahsoka come in? Mando's like, take Grogu. She's like, nah, I'm doing my own thing. But the story still focuses around the Mandalorian. And he
Mhm.
sort of helps Ahsoka, but the whole episode's not about Ahsoka. And even when Mando leaves, they never mention Ahsoka again. You know, Boba Fett comes in as well. Like we've all been wanting to see Boba Fett come and do some pretty cool stuff for a while. And yeah, he helps Mando, but he doesn't take over the show. And quite famously, Luke Skywalker showing up. He shows up for 5 minutes, does really awesome stuff, and then he leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like a lot of shows, they would bring in like a really cool character, but then that cool character sort of becomes the center of the show, and that the main story or the main character kind of gets sidelined for a bit.
Yeah, I can
What's your thoughts on that?
definitely think of a few moments where that happened in other Star Wars shows. Boba
Yeah.
Fett, cough, cough.
Yeah.
Um, but I think also I'm torn on that because, like, I get, especially like the Ahsoka episode is a backdoor pilot to see people's reception to Ahsoka appearing before they
Yeah.
do her own show. And so I get that stuff is going to happen. But it also, the fact that it comes in for an episode and then is done feels a little like, well, where's the consequence? Where, walking into meeting Ahsoka, the Mandalorian and Grogu are in one spot. Leaving Ahsoka, they're in that same spot.
True.
And I think that's kind of my overall issue with the Mandalorian is they tell you they're doing big things and each episode is important, but the journey of the characters only changes every couple episodes instead of impacting each episode and having that carry through, which is where I think it should have just been kind of a monster of the week adventure where it doesn't matter
Hmm.
if it carries through because
Yeah.
every week is just a fun new adventure. And the fact that Ahsoka's there for only an episode is because they were working for Ahsoka for one episode.
Yeah. Almost kind of like how the Clone Wars was done,
Yeah.
eh? Yeah, where it's sort of like you had like an arc of episodes or a few episodes where they would set on a planet or set on a specific story, but then it was completely done
Yeah. Or even
after
I
that
think
and moved on.
we'll get onto it more later, but Andor kind of does that where it does like 3 episode chunks. A couple
Yeah,
episodes are set on this one area and mission, and then he moves on to the next.
yeah. And then obviously Mandalorian season 3. I think this was one of the few times we both heavily agreed on something Star Wars related. It was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
rough. I think it missed the mark in so many ways. It lost all of the parts that I enjoyed about the Mandalorian show just kind of fell away. It got too distracted trying to tie together a bunch of stuff. The whole wrap up of the Moff Gideon storyline is just like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that the Moff Gideon that was at the very end was a clone of Moff Gideon, or do you think that was the actual Moff Gideon?
I think they want us to not know so that they can do whatever they want when they figure out what that is. I think they were very pleased with themselves that they didn't definitively say one or the other, because then it's like, oh, you know what? We're kind of done with Moff Gideon. Let's just let it be. They can just leave him be. But if
Yeah,
they want to be like, oh, you know what? He would fit really well in this storyline. Let's just spend 5 minutes showing that that was a clone and that the real Moff Gideon is out there somewhere.
because they do have a whole episode where it's about the like weird bits of the Empire have like infiltrated the New Republic, and they're
Mhm.
getting all this, like cloning abilities and stuff, and they're secretly shipping it to Moff Gideon. We do see they're like 8 or like 12 tanks of just Moff Gideon.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about you, Everett, but with all this, cloning stuff, it sounds cool. But I feel like that trying to make an excuse and it just for, and what's the right word? Like a reason for why the Emperor came back. Because they
Yeah.
simply just could not give one in the
Yeah, I
movie.
think it's either that or just like the whole was like that the Emperor made a bunch of Snoke clones or
Yeah.
whatever in episode 9. Yeah, I think it's just kind of trying to justify and be like, "Oh no, see, this is all part of the overall Star Wars story," when clearly it's a panic last minute. Oh, people didn't like that. Let's try and justify it in
Yeah.
the TV show people do like. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I if it turns out, Moff Gideon is just dead and they just took the technology and applied it to Snoke, cool, whatever. If it turns out he's still alive, cool, whatever.
What if they use this technology on Thrawn and we like 12 Thrawns for the big Mandoverse film that we'll be talking about later?
It would
How do you think that
be
would work?
it would be interesting. I think it would be really funny if they did that and then they all just fight each other for power. And
Yeah.
that's the inevitable downfall of Thrawn, is not because I think they've written themselves into an issue with Thrawn, which we can talk about more later, but he's supposed to be so powerful, but he's gotta
Yeah.
lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if
Exactly.
he takes himself out, it's a little more justifiable. So maybe
Yeah.
that's where they're going.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, let's try to quickly skim through these live action
Yeah,
shows,
yeah.
and then we'll reach the new projects. Let's start with the big one, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, this was probably the most hyped project that Disney has made, except for The Force Awakens,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Everyone's been wanting
Agreed.
the Obi-Wan show. Everyone's been wanting to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christian
Yeah.
come back to play their iconic roles as Obi-Wan and Anakin. When you heard they're doing an Obi-Wan show, what was your thoughts and feelings?
I was not I was like, I wanna see more Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. I love them. I think they're great for their characters, and I was happy they're getting a show. I knew it would be bad.
Yeah.
I just the more I saw of the trailers, it looked messy and flat and like everything's filmed in the volume, and I wasn't inspired by that. I think you create a real issue of the continuity of Obi-Wan being on the planet with Luke, and he's supposed to be there
Mm,
watching, and then he just disappears to go on this side adventure. And like, not that that's a big deal per se, but I feel like the character in episode 4 has clearly gone mad from isolation to some extent,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's kind of been a kooky old man. But if he's still out adventuring, doesn't quite fit that feeling to me.
yeah,
I think like you have to include someone like Leia, because why else would he have left?
yeah,
But at the same time, I thought like, I don't want to beat up on a kid actor, and like the actor did an okay job, but the character of Leia was just kind of annoying.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's I felt a lot of these children type characters are really annoying. Like the Bad Batch is an animated show. Have you seen the Bad Batch?
I couldn't finish it because Omega is so awful.
She is. She is. I love the story on where it's going. So in season 2, it is starting the transition of taking out the clones and using stormtroopers instead. And even like there are great moments, even Commander Cody realizes what he did to Obi-Wan, and there's like a great sad moment with that. A lot of the characters, like Crosshair, for example, he has a lot of really great character-based episodes. But Omega just shut up. Like she's so annoying. And I feel so bad because I'm pretty sure the voice actor that plays her is a New Zealander.
Yeah, I was looking at this just the other day because I was talking with my fiance about it and trying to convince her of this character in a show she's never seen is the worst character ever. And yeah, I looked her up and she's either New Zealand or Australian. I can't remember which, but
yeah, and it's so cool because Tamir Morrison as well, plays as Boba and every single clone trooper in the in the Star Wars universe. Like it's so cool to see like a New Zealander be part of the Star Wars universe, but it's like I'm sorry, but her voice is just too annoying for me to keep watching.
Her voice is annoying, and all her lines are just the most generic. Like, we've got to be friends. We're together, and it's like, oh my word, I'm so cool. I can do this. It's like, just stop. You're 2. You're 2 years old. Just go sit down somewhere and let us handle this.
And even with Princess Leia, like I found at times she was annoying, but I thought at times that she was fine. But it wasn't really. I mean, there's only one character specifically who always really annoyed me, which I think would be the same for you, Reva. But I feel like even then, there were a lot of characters who just said and did some really stupid stuff. Like there's a chase scene in the first episode where Princess Leia outruns like a bunch of bounty hunters, which that's just hard to watch. There's one moment which I always keep going back to whenever I tell people how bad the Obi-Wan show was. It was when like they had to escape from Darth Vader and everyone, and the guy's like, "No, Obi-Wan, you can't take your own ship and lead them away because there's not enough people to fit onto one ship." But they all still managed to fit into one ship anyways. Yeah.
I think that perfectly encapsulates the writing in these shows where they go, oh no, here's a problem. But then they don't want to actually have to figure out a solution to that problem. So they just kind of forget that they introduced a problem.
Yeah.
And
I will admit, everything Ewan McGregor had done, except for hiding Princess Leia under his coat in the Inquisitor base, that was pretty dumb. But everything that Ewan McGregor had done, everything that Hayden Christian had done, everything that Darth Vader was doing was fantastic.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree with that. But I also, it makes me question the episode 4 encounter because they talk a lot like haven't seen each other, not since he's become Darth Vader, but since he left him on Mustafar. And like, it feels weird that they had an encounter in the middle.
Yeah.
That was so dramatic.
I mean, because there's a thing where Darth Vader knows that Obi-Wan is alive, but Moff Tarkin, I think that's his name, it's like, no, surely he must be dead by now. But he knows that Obi-Wan is still out there and alive. And when he talks, he says, I was the learner, but now I'm the master. I think that's, when Darth Vader fought Obi-Wan, like, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what time period it was, but I know that there was a specific period where Darth Vader was really, like, impossible to defeat against, like, any Jedi. So maybe it was before Darth Vader reached that point. Maybe it was after that. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I don't know. It lacked a little. It didn't feel important enough to risk messing with the canon, and so in the end, they just kind of played it safe and a little generic, so that their encounter had no consequences, and that they could just hand wave and be like, yeah, but he meant this when he said that, like Obi-Wan saying from a certain point of view. When I left you, I was but the learner from a certain point of view.
Yeah. Apparently, it's been rumored now. this hasn't been greenlit at all. I haven't seen any article or any news that's been said that this is greenlit, but there's a couple rumors that Obi-Wan will be getting a second season that will follow his training with Qui-Gon. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that seems more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's like Star Wars, you can't do really a character drama. You got to have some action because that's what the show is. But I
Yeah.
think, especially with this whole like time travel-y force tree stuff that they introduced in like Rebels and brought into live action with Ahsoka, I think there's room to like have a Qui-Gon Obi-Wan series where they are jumping back to moments when Obi-Wan's younger or creating, scenarios and stuff within that world to fill your action so that you
Yeah.
don't have to again pull him away or have him deal with like a trivial dispute on Tatooine that feels inconsequential after he just fought Darth Vader in his last season.
Yeah. I mean, Reva's still technically around, so maybe they could play around something with that. Maybe Reva
Yeah.
becomes, more powerful than Darth Vader. Who knows? But
Yeah.
I actually have an idea, which I'd love to run this by you.
Okay.
Tales of the Jedi, like
Mhm.
season 3, perhaps, or even in the season they'll be coming out. But you have 1 or 2 episodes of just Obi-Wan training with Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Because I feel like it would be hard to do like a whole series, like 6 episodes or 8 episodes, just staying in one place and training with not much action or drama, because nothing can really happen. Like they
Yeah.
almost broke canon with Reva chasing after Luke. So the whole point in A New Hope is that Luke had no idea what a lightsaber was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't really have any of that sort of stuff going on Tatooine. And you can't have Obi-Wan really interfere much with Luke's life either, because, they are kind of strangers in A New Hope as well. So yeah. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I Tales of the Jedi is one of my favorite things that they've
Mm.
introduced in the Disney era. I really enjoy that animation style and the feel of those. And I think it's the perfect opportunity to do something like this where, yeah, there's not enough for 6 episodes. And then also like with animation, I feel like you can get away with making things feel more exciting and dramatic without having to blow an entire budget on something.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
they could make Tatooine cool and exciting or, have some training that's really out there and bizarre without having to spend absurd amounts of money to try and make CGI look cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think in the first season of Tales of Jedi, the Ahsoka episodes were kind of like all right for me. I wasn't too invested because I already feel like I know Ahsoka pretty well.
Mhm.
But the Count Dooku episodes were great.
Yeah. Yeah, they
I
were
loved
really
that.
cool.
It made me love his character a lot more,
Yeah.
because he really is like another Anakin almost.
Yeah, in a lot of ways they are very similar, and I think, yeah, that's the perfect place to explore these kind of weird these characters we know exist or interacted and just show us a bit more about them, give them a little more dimension, instead of just chucking them in a half an episode of one of the other shows and then trying to stretch their character arc over a full season.
Yeah. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah.
Great question.
Um. Here's a show idea similar to Tales of the Jedi, but it's Tales of the Sith.
Okay.
Would you be keen on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would also, especially if they go back to, like, really old Sith legends and like show how they got their rule where you're only supposed to have 2 or, do an Asajj Ventress episode and show some more of her or something like that
Yeah.
could be really interesting. Show
I feel
Darth
like
Maul and how he became, uh,
yeah,
the
yeah,
apprentice.
definitely. And also General Grievous. I'm not sure why, but in the last couple of weeks I've been very high on General Grievous. I've been like so obsessed with him, and just like his story on how he became this droid killing
Mhm.
machine, basically.
Yeah.
And because do you know his backstory? Have you read that book
I
or?
haven't read anything about it. I know the, like, little bits they tell you in the Clone Wars show.
Yeah, so he was basically a Tusken Raider, I believe, originally, and then they were attacked by someone. I always keep forgetting who it was, but he needed the Jedi in the Republic to come help. But since the Tusken Raiders, no one came to help, so he eventually found Count Dooku, and he basically made him into this droid cyborg. So that's why he's still got organs and everything
Yeah,
as well. And yeah, I just love that backstory. It's like,
yeah,
completely broken, completely destroyed, and it's just hunting for revenge. Like that's why we love Darth Maul.
for sure. Yeah, no, I think there's room to do literally anything in those shows. Just grab a
Yeah,
character, get someone who's passionate about it to write the script, and just see what happens. And if, it doesn't work, it was only 2 episodes or 1 episode, like, you can just move on from it as if it never
yeah,
existed.
yeah, exactly. So we've got two more live action shows to talk about.
Mhm.
I think we can quickly skim over this one, the Book of Boba Fett, aka Mando 2.5. What's your overall thoughts on this?
Yeah, I hated it. From the super slow speeder bike chase to the complete waste of Cad Bane to
Yeah,
just the derailment of the show to becoming The Mandalorian's show and showing, like, important information between season 2 and 3 of The Mandalorian in this other show that's not supposed to be about him.
yeah,
It was a mess. I don't know what they were going for. I love Boba Fett as a concept, but I guess the more and more you see his character, he's just nothing.
yeah,
Like, he
yeah,
barely appears in the original trilogy, and we all loved him for that, and now that we're seeing more of him, it's like, why? He's
yeah,
suddenly a hero, he cares about people and things? No, like, he's just a ruthless
yeah.
bounty hunter. Show me
He
more of
wants
that.
to lead with respect.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a terrible show. I
Mhm.
loved, especially with how it was filmed as well. It was kind of like, what's that movie? The one with Sandra Bullock, and you couldn't take off your blindfolds. Have you
Oh,
seen
Bird
that?
Box.
Bird Box, yeah, where they kept cutting back and forth from what's happening and what was happening. So, like, Ark on Bird Box, you knew all the characters were going to die because they went in the boat with her, right? When she was with the kids. Same with Boba Fett. You knew something bad had to happen to the Tusken Raiders because they're not there with them, right?
Yeah,
And for me personally, the Tusken Raiders were the best part of that show. Like,
yeah,
learning more about their tribe, their clan and stuff, how they like took down that train. And yeah, I
yeah,
absolutely loved the Tusken Raiders and Cad Bane as well. Probably one of the best side villains, side villains being, Darth Vader and the Emperor and Count Dooku being the main ones. I think Star Wars has ever had.
yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
I've been rewatching the Clone Wars recently, and he's just so awesome.
Yeah. He doesn't he like break into the Jedi Temple, have like a lot of people, including Jedi, held hostage to rescue one of the huts or something.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the end of season 1. He takes a bunch of senators captive, and outsmarts Anakin and some other Jedi and stuff to be able to escape with the Hutts. He then in another episode steals a holocron and stuff. Like, he can do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he might be the only bounty hunter who can easily kill a Jedi as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, and then
with these,
he's
yeah.
completely wasted in Boba Fett.
Yeah. I actually made a meme and it went trending on Facebook actually. I hate to brag, but it did, where it was him going, "You're a cold-blooded killer, Boba, and that's how you'll always be." And then it's just Boba Fett stabbing him through the heart to prove how wrong he is. you know, but yeah, no, like Cad Bane, I loved his introduction into the show. How he just shoots like Cobb Vanth and the other guy as like a
Yeah,
warning to not mess with him. But then the whole fight between him and Boba was, yeah, it was
um,
bad. Yeah, it's
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is easily the worst of the Disney live action shows. Like, it
Oh,
just
I
is a
agree.
mess.
I agree.
Yeah.
And Andor. Now, I personally saw this as a bit of a sleep fest, but I know you really loved it, so the
Yeah.
floor is yours. Tell me why it was great.
Yeah, I think as someone who loved Star Wars as a kid and then ended up at film school and more on the dramatic side of things, I like my character pieces and my slow moving
Mm,
type of shows. And I think this was a good balance because Star Wars, it's meant to be fun. It's for younger audiences, but also adults. But like it should be fun for all ages. And Andor is not fun for all ages. It is fun for the cynical, grumpy Star Wars fans such as myself. And yeah, I really, not every moment in the show was top tier for me. But I enjoyed that it clearly had a vision and a purpose and a direction they wanted to go, and they achieved that across the season. I think Diego Luna does a great Andor, um, and I like the fact that a lot of it wasn't shot in the volume because it
yeah.
actually was on location, and that looks so much better. And I don't know why they don't do that more.
Yeah, I will admit, like even with the Obi-Wan show, a lot of the locations, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen a place like that before. Like we first fight Darth Vader. It's like I'm pretty sure if I was to drive like out South Auckland, I can find like a dump yard that looks the exact same. But Andor and Ahsoka as well, for me personally, are two shows where they really like you really feel like you're in a completely different planet. Especially once I enter the new galaxy, it's like you feel like
Yeah.
you're actually in a new place that you haven't seen
See,
before.
the issue is those new planets look exactly like Utah, which is where I currently live.
Oh really?
So for me, it was like, oh, I could drive in half an hour and be in a field that looks just like this.
I will admit the Prison Break episodes. I mean,
Hmm.
I have a bit of personal bias because I just love Andy Serkis. He's
Well,
probably
yeah,
one of my
who doesn't?
top actors of all time. So, like his speech, his monologue, and even his heartbreaking moment where he's like, "I can't swim," like
Yeah.
that was great. I will admit,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I guess I like my lightsabers. I guess maybe I'm still just a young kid who needs who needs lightsaber action to keep me keep me interested.
Yeah, it's definitely a different pace from your usual Star Wars, and I think that's what I liked about it is it was something new and
Mm,
interesting, and not just kind of retreading the same stuff. But yeah, it can be a little slow, and I both love and don't love the kind of 3 episode structure where it like
mm,
follows a story for a couple episodes and moves on to whole new characters and a whole new situation. I liked that in that it meant, there were consequences within those 3 episodes and he had to move forward. But it also, there were times where I was like, oh, I don't love this section and I know I'm going to have to stay here for another episode and a half.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's basically all the live action shows, except for Ahsoka, which I feel like it perfectly ties in all the new projects
Mhm.
that's going to come out. So I guess let's just start with our previous podcast. Everyone heard myself, Adam, and Harry's thoughts on Ahsoka. I'd love to hear what your overall thoughts on Ahsoka was.
Yeah, more of the same. It was fine. I think it got better as it went. The first few episodes were painful and slow. There's like a minute and a half of her turning that circle map thing, and
Yeah,
it's just like, oh my word, what are we doing here? Why is any of this happening? And it's just so boring. Um, but I think the show is entirely saved by Ezra. I don't know what happened, if someone different wrote those episodes, but as soon as Ezra shows up, he reminds everyone that, yeah, you guys were characters in Rebels and you were fun. We laughed, we had jokes, we didn't just walk
mm,
around grumpy all the time. And suddenly there was life in the show and, some charisma on the screen and some excitement. And I don't love everything that happened in the other galaxy situation, like Sabine suddenly becoming so strong in the Force she
with the
can barely
force,
move a
yeah,
lightsaber, and then she can throw Ezra across a 200-foot gap.
yeah,
Like, sure, whatever.
yeah,
um, but at the same time, I found that much more exciting than just watching them slowly walk around spaceships and talk to courts and
Yeah.
just very boring procedural stuff to get them in place to where they wanted them to be.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite funny because with all these Rebels characters coming in and Ahsoka as well, like Ahsoka, I was interested to see what they're going to do with it. Ezra and Thrawn, I was excited to see what was going to happen between the two of them. There's a lot of theories about the Inquisitor looking guy, Marok, I think that was his name.
Yeah.
Potentially he's Ezra, but no, he's just
Smoke
a
guy.
puff of smoke. Yeah, smoke. Yeah, it's like a smoke grenade tossed into a suit of armor. Go do your thing, bro.
Yeah.
But two characters I really loved, and like I've been banging on about this for so long.
I know.
Shin and Balin. For me personally, I actually had an argument about this with a good friend of mine last night on our Survivor UK podcast. Shin and Balin, in my opinion, are the most interesting characters Disney Star Wars has made.
Interesting. I think they could be. They could be the most interesting characters. I don't think we know particularly about Shin. We don't know enough about her and how she
Yeah.
got to where she is and what her personal motivations are, because she says like 5 lines in the whole show. I think there is a lot of room to explore them, and they could be super interesting. And I'm very excited to see where Balin goes and everything that happens with that. I know the actor, having passed, puts that all in a tricky situation. So I don't know what they're going to do with all of that. But yeah, I think they definitely could be the most interesting. On the basis of Ahsoka, they are decent side characters.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough because they weren't really the main focus, or always sort of a side focus. It was always about Morgan and Thrawn and Ahsoka and Sabine. But yeah, overall, I'll give the show an 8 out of 10. I feel like I was invested in the story compared to some of the other shows like Mando season 3 that recently came out. Obi-Wan towards the end, I was pretty burnt out by. The Boba Fett show, I was not really that interested in. So I feel like I finally felt something again
Yeah.
with the Ahsoka show, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, especially
Yeah.
because a lot of Legends I feel like has kind of been incorporated into the show. Have you
Yeah.
read a lot of Star Wars like Legends comics?
Not in a long time, not since I was a kid.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I think they can do some really interesting things going forward. I controversially, I think like the worst episode of the show is the one with Hayden Christensen. I know a lot of
Oh,
people
okay.
love that, but what happened? Like what
Yeah.
what development to the arc of the characters was achieved by that? Ahsoka was grumpy and struggling to be a master. That episode ends and she's grumpy and struggling to be a master. It was just showing you imagery that you know from your childhood to make you excited, is what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
And it just kind of kept going, and I felt no purpose behind it other than like, oh, we haven't had a cameo in a little while. Let's throw Hayden Christensen in.
Yeah.
But outside of that episode, I do think all the ideas they've introduced are very interesting and compelling. And I'm excited to see where the story develops, even if it did start a little slow for me.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly talk about Future of Ahsoka because it's been confirmed, I think, yesterday or the day before, an article came out where, even though the actor strike is still going, Ahsoka season 2 has been greenlit, and they're going to be moving the production to Pinewood Studios in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally don't know a lot about Pinewood, but apparently it's a much more bigger like studio and all that sort of stuff for filming.
Yeah, it's that's where they made the original trilogy and stuff, was at Pinewood.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, sick. Maybe we'll get George Lucas to come on back and show show everyone how to really make a good Star Wars.
I don't know.
Except for the prequels.
Yeah, I was gonna say the last 3. He's only directed 4 Star Wars movies, and 3 of them are iffy. So
did he do Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, he did all 3 prequels, and he only did episode 4. He didn't direct 5 and 6.
Okay, well, never mind. Take back what I said.
Great ideas, man. iffy
Yeah.
director.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, wasn't he like producer and director on the prequels
Yeah,
and scriptwriter?
yes, yeah, he did everything himself for the prequels, and it shows.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like because of the Clone Wars show, everyone now loves the prequels, but I'm still kind of on the like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones was bad. Like, it makes the third film look even more fantastic, but it does not make the first two
Yeah,
any better.
yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, so Ahsoka season 2. You know, we end with a bit of a cliffhanger with Thrawn and Ezra making their way back to the main galaxy. Ezra reunites with the New Republic and Hera, and Thrawn arrives on Dathomir, which is the home planet of the Night Sisters, or Darth Maul, quite famously. Um, let's but Ahsoka, Sabine, and my future wife Shin and her master Balin are left on Peridia. I feel like season 2 is mostly going to focus on how do they bring Ahsoka and Sabine back to the main galaxy.
Yeah, and I think my issue is just go to the whales. The whales got you there. They'll take you back, and eventually they'll figure out how to get there. And
Yeah,
that kind of solves itself. I hope, and again, it'll be a little tricky, but I honestly kind of hope season 2 is not about them trying to get back, and it's about Ahsoka and Sabine realizing that what Balin is up to could be far worse and that they need to stay. And that,
yeah,
they spend the first episode like, oh, we've got to get back. We've got to get back. And then they realize, oh no, this is where we're supposed to be. And we need to stop what's happening here. And then the stuff happening back there is Ezra's to deal with.
yeah. Because a small problem I've had with these Star Wars shows is a problem I've had with Marvel for quite some time, and so I'm not that big fan of Marvel anymore. Which is, with the original, I mean, they made a good reason why Ahsoka could not be part of the original trilogy, and that's because Ezra saved her from, the world between worlds, so she can't really affect the timeline that much, especially with that period. But why wasn't Hera and Sabine part of the original trilogy, right? And
Yep.
and it's kind of happening with the sequels again. Where it's like we've got all these characters now who are coming out as heroes. Like Mando is now like officially, unofficially part of the New Republic. It's still got Zeb, who's with New Republics, Hera. So, I mean, potentially Sabine might come back. But now with Ezra coming back, it's like, okay, what happens to all these characters who weren't in the sequels, and why aren't they in the sequels?
Yeah. It's a real Rogue One situation where it's like either
Yeah,
you've got to kill everyone or you've got to come up with some real good excuse that they suddenly abandon all their morals and principles. And yeah, it creates kind of an issue for them. I also think it happens with all of the stuff that's been getting shown between like 3 and 4 and how many Jedi are revealed to have survived all these things and everything
yeah,
happening there, that like suddenly we're supposed to believe nobody's ever even heard of a Jedi or remembers what the Force is by the time we get to episode 4. And then again, it's kind of like episode 7 starts with people not really believing in Jedi anymore, or that all of that's really out there and just like,
mm,
it's not a part of their culture. And yet Luke has a whole academy that he's been training, and like
yeah,
we're again seeing all of these characters like Ezra, Sabine, suddenly Ahsoka so involved in stuff. Why?
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of Jedi going around for a
yeah,
world
definitely.
that's supposed to be devoid of them.
Like, there's this meme, and it's quite an old meme, but I keep seeing it like a couple times every year. It always makes me laugh. Where it's like a pitch meeting for like a film or some kind of like thing, and someone will suggest an idea, but then they throw them out of the window
Oh
of
yeah,
like a
yeah,
really tall building. And it's like, hey, why don't we just and the whole board meeting is like, okay, hear me out. It's a Star Wars project, and it's about a Jedi who survived Order 66. And if someone goes, wasn't there only meant to be like very few who survived Order 66? And then just them getting thrown out the window.
yeah.
Because Quinlan Voss is still around. Obviously, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Cal Kestis. Have you played any of the Fallen Order games?
I've played the first one and I've seen most of the second one.
Yeah, so he's still
He's
out and
kicking
about
around.
his
You've got the
story isn't wrapped up.
Inquisitors running around being well known by everybody, and their
Yeah,
lightsabers and the Force. So again, why does nobody know what that is?
yeah, exactly. And well, I think at one point, I know it's in a Legends comic book where Vader kills off all the Inquisitors. So maybe there was like quite a few years gap or something like that, or maybe the Empire just forced everyone to forget. I don't know. So they did have that machine where they used in Mando where you could wipe entire memory out or someone. Maybe they just did it with every single person in
Every
the
single person. Yeah, they're
Star Wars
adding
galaxy.
a drug to the food supply,
Yeah,
and it slowly erases your memory.
yeah, exactly. Specifically about one thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Just lightsabers. Suddenly, lightsabers, they don't exist. You've never seen anything like that.
But something I do quite like that at the end of the Ahsoka show
Mm-hmm.
is that they can do whatever they want with Ahsoka, with Baylan, with Shin and Sabine, because no matter what they do, it's not going to affect the new galaxy.
Yeah.
Something that I think that would be kind of cool that they could introduce is maybe even have some old Republic characters come in potentially, right? Because
Yeah.
even though that's set thousands of years, before the first film, you can do whatever you want in this new galaxy.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Rules
And
don't apply.
yeah, exactly. Because a theory I had originally, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I thought Merrick, who was the Inquisitor guy in the first few Ahsoka episodes, was a potential canon star killer that was sent from the other galaxy to kind of show them that making this jump can be possible, but it requires so much hyperspace power and everything, and it's really hard to do. And I thought that's something that could have been quite cool, a canon version of Starkiller. Obviously, that was not the case, but in theory, you could literally do whatever you want with this new galaxy and make it work.
I think they really missed a trick of making like episode 1 of Ahsoka, or even like maybe episode 2, they go to the new galaxy, and then making the whole battle against Thrawn is stopping Thrawn from getting back. And that's what this whole Thrawn era of Star Wars should be, is set in a separate galaxy, take some characters that we know and love, and then you can do literally anything, and it makes complete sense why nobody's heard of it happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get this dynamic of like risking my life even though no one will ever see and no one will ever know what we've done. It's important, and that's the sacrifice we're making. And I think that's a very interesting and fun version of this world. But the problem is they've already sent Thrawn back, and so if Ahsoka and Sabine don't go back in in season 2, it's gonna be like, well, what was the whole point of season 1 of them trying to get to Thrawn if they're just gonna forget about him? So you've got to do some of that, but at the same time, I really think you shouldn't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there definitely is a world where Ahsoka and Sabine don't even go back during season 2, because something that really has been set up here is, have you read the Thrawn's comic book trilogy, Heir to the Empire?
I have not. I've seen bits and pieces of it online, but I never read it.
So, I mean, basically to sum it up, it quite literally is Thrawn in the last bits of the Empire against Luke, Han, and Leia, basically, as they lead the New Republic. And, they're still young, they're still fresh. This is the time of Legends Luke as well, as he was going off doing his own thing and whatnot. Yeah, that's why I feel like they're really setting up, especially with Dave Filoni's movie that we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But just going back to Ahsoka, what's some of your thoughts and predictions for what could happen in a season 2?
Yeah, I think, I forget what it's called, but there's stuff in like the Clone Wars and Rebels with like Force trees and discovering the Force and these greater gods and powers at play.
The Mortis gods?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think we could start kind of bringing that over to the live action world and exploring some of that lore and part of the Star Wars universe. But I also think, I worry, I should say, that it's going to all get just kind of swept under the rug in favor of getting Ahsoka and Sabine back to the main galaxy. and it's going to just be, kind of left as a side thing. Who knows if they'll even fully develop what they were going for at the end of Ahsoka.
Yeah.
But it might, and I worry as well the fact that Ezra and Thrawn are now separate from Ahsoka, that we're going to have another TV show called Ahsoka, not about Ahsoka,
Yeah,
where
true.
like, Boba Fett is really a Mandalorian show. The Mandalorian at times is other people's show. Obi-Wan
Yeah.
is kind of also a Leia show. I
And
think
a Reva show.
a Reva show for sure. I think we're going to run into that issue where they're going to struggle to tell a story about Ahsoka and
Yeah.
a story about Ezra in the same show. But because of name recognition, I don't think they're going to suddenly break it into two different shows and say, okay, now we have Ezra and the Thrawn stuff happening in one show, and we're having Ahsoka and Baylan in another show.
Yeah. I mean, it might be quite cool if they'd potentially had one episode in the show just showing Thrawn setting up his army. Because I'm not sure what you think, but I think in those tombs that they're bringing over in those coffins, they're dead Night Sisters. Because there was an episode in Clone Wars where Jenna Grievous just annihilates all of them, which was a really great series of episodes. And I think that's them reviving all the dead Night Sisters, and that's Thrawn's army against the New Republic.
Yeah. I definitely could see that. Night Sisters, or like whatever the like Darth Maul and Savage Opress, they're guys, just a bunch of them, or one or two of them and a bunch of Night Sisters or whatever. And I love Thrawn. I think he is one of the best things to happen to Star Wars. He's so calm and cool and calculated, and he kind of backs it up. That being said, yes, he only sends 2 TIE fighters at times for no reason. And he only, he makes some bad decisions. But I think if they're going to nail Thrawn, he needs to get back and basically wreck the New Republic.
Yeah.
And set up, essentially get in motion the First Order.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Thrawn will set up the First Order, and I think this is where you could introduce characters like Captain Phasma, for example, which is Captain Phasma a she or a he?
Believe she.
She, where she was an interesting character in the First Order. General Hux as well. You can easily introduce Snoke as well. You could easily introduce.
Yeah, I think a really good ending for this whole Thrawn saga, which kind of gets into the movie a little bit, would be Thrawn succeeding, setting up the First Order, and then bringing back Palpatine and creating Snoke, and then getting killed by them. Kind of like his arrogance. He thinks he can play on the same level as them, and they just discard him to the side.
Yeah, that could be pretty sick. Actually, I'd love to see that. He does a really great job defeating the New Republic. He remakes Palpatine, but the Palpatine just kills him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting. I think what's more likely to happen is our band of heroes from this era of Star Wars come together and they win the day. Hurrah.
Hurrah. They could even introduce Finn as a stormtrooper as well. Which
they
could be
could,
quite interesting. Yeah.
At least, I mean, he's supposed to just be like a janitor or whatever, so they could have a cameo. Cleaning some stuff.
I've got a strong theory, and I've had this theory for a while about Ahsoka season 2. So have you heard of Abeloth?
Abeloth. I know the name.
So basically, long story short, Abeloth is kind of with the Mortis god. So you've got the father, who's the balance of the Force, son, dark side, daughter, light side. But she was immortal, whereas they're also immortal. And I sort of forgot how the series of events kind of happened, but she basically drank from this fountain of knowledge. She swam in and whatnot in hopes to be immortal just like them, but instead she became this horrible demonic creature, and they basically used all their powers to exile her on this planet, and they left her. And in the end of Ahsoka, we see Baylan. He's standing on the father, and he's pointing to a star that was like a wee light on top of a mountain, but you have all 3 of them there, which there's a lot of theories that's potentially a Mortis gate,
Yep.
to get to, their planet. But I think potentially with how he's pointing, how all three of them are there, except for the daughter's head, because obviously the daughter's inside Ahsoka. I think that's them exiling Abeloth.
Okay.
And I think Balin potentially realized that, which is why he leaves Shin. Because,
Okay.
Abeloth is a female, maybe
Yep.
she would possess a Shin. So I think he goes there. And here's something interesting that they could do as well, which could easily solve the actor passing away thing. Have Abeloth possess Balin.
Yeah.
So you get this, like, sort of mixture of Balin and, like, this, horrific demonic god. And potentially first few episodes of Ahsoka is like Shin and her bandits. I think Shin's going to be like another version of Darth Maul
Okay.
type character, where she's just like really fueled by hate. She has her own sort of, like, I guess, like, yeah, her bandits, right? So
Yeah.
I think she's like an early villain for Ahsoka and Sabine, but then Balin and Abeloth is like the greater villain. Because even in the comics, Luke, I think, teamed up with the Empire and got everyone against Abeloth because no one could ever take her down on her own.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that again speaks to this whole, like, Ahsoka's show should not be about going back to the New Republic. It should be about the greater mysteries of the Force and the world of Star Wars. And I think, Balin either getting possessed or, honestly, I don't know what something happened when we learned that we could CGI people's faces, but we no longer recast. And I don't want to say this, like, to be insensitive, but why would we I don't just recast Balin? It's unfortunate, it's sad, it's tragic, but that's how this should be. Don't just keep recreating people in CGI, please.
Yeah. I think it makes sense for characters like Luke and Leia, where, like, getting the original looks in right for that time period. Like with Han Solo, they're easily able to recast, I think, because it's set even then quite a few years before.
Yeah, when he's younger.
And you hope, when he's a lot younger. So it makes sense to recast there. But it's hard to get, like Mark Hamill now to look like what he did back in the
For sure.
1980s, right? So,
but I don't know. I think they could have just recast all of that stuff, or just don't include them.
yeah, definitely. A great option I've been seeing going around is it Sean Bean, the guy who plays Boromir, Lord of the Rings? Yeah. There's a lot of theories going around that he could make it great. Balin, what's your thoughts?
I mean, it would guarantee that he dies by the end of the season. That's all Sean Bean ever does. But I think he'd be a great fit.
Yeah. We've already talked a wee bit about the Heir to the Empire film that Dave Filoni's going to be making. So basically, this is like the Infinity War of Star Wars, in my opinion, where it's really wrapping up, all the shows: Boba Fett, Mando, Ahsoka. It's got Rebels characters in it, the original trilogy characters in it, against Thrawn and his army. I guess what's your, obviously we talked about our sort of predictions with Thrawn at the end with Emperor. Apart from that, do you have any other predictions on what could happen?
I don't know. I'm worried about it, and for a few different reasons. I think one of the main ones, the shows have been so inconsistent and hit or miss that I don't see them all meshing together easily. And they've set themselves an ambitious goal of getting this movie out pretty, like, in just a couple of years, which
I think 2026, 2027
which
is the
is
rough date.
3 years, 4 years from now, which means you've got to figure out all of your TV shows and how every single one of those feeds into the other, and write an entire movie script and produce it all in just 3 or 4 years. And they've been struggling to do that without that lofty ambition of a movie that's supposed to culminate everything, and it's struggled. That's kind of my prediction, is that they either need to start cutting some stuff out or rein in fan expectations on what this movie is going to be. And so I think I'm hoping that really it's just kind of we get an Ahsoka season 2, maybe some way that Mandalorian gets involved in this because they'll want him to be there, but really just focus in on that Ahsoka stuff.
Yeah.
But this also, we were just talking about how we would love it if Ahsoka's about all this other Legends stuff and not um Thrawn. So like
Yeah.
if we're going to be spending a whole season not talking about Thrawn for the Ahsoka show, that's another year of time that we don't have developing this grand climax. And I think
Yeah.
expectations are going to be for something like Infinity War, but our issue is we haven't even had our first Avengers movie.
Yeah. True. True. Like
So
all those points are very valid.
I fear for it.
Yeah. I think it could really go either way. I think it could be potentially as great as an Infinity War type film. I hope that is not just a one film. I would kind of love it if maybe it was stretched out similar to the Empire comics, where it was a 2 to 3 film story.
Mhm.
But it does seem like it is just going to be the one. I think that Ahsoka season 2 and Mandalorian season 4 would have to come out before this movie, which even then it's like it'll probably. I think Ahsoka season 2 is probably going to be a bit of a rush.
Yeah.
I think Mando season 4. I mean, nothing can be as bad as season 3, even though they rush it. But we do see at the end of Mando season 3. He's part of the New Republic. He's got a relationship with Carson Tavor, I believe that's his name, and he said that he was going to pick up some bounties on ex-Imperials. So maybe he stumbles across Thrawn and his massive giant Star Destroyer, and he's like, "Yo, okay, I'm going to help them fight Thrawn," and that maybe that's how he brings some Boba Fett and Fennec Chan into it, perhaps, and
Get them.
Bo-Katan. Yeah, true. But I can see that all happening in Mando season 4. Maybe they focus on more the New Republic stuff. Because there was a show that was meant to come out, Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
But they scrapped that, and I'm pretty sure they had one of those episodes set in the Mandalorian season 3. The one was all set on Coruscant.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that could potentially be used in Mando season 4.
Yeah, I think they're very quickly going to have to move over what the current storylines are, which is Mandalorian essentially having wrapped up his time and retiring with Grogu. Suddenly you've got to get over that, create something enough to drive him back into action, which is easy enough, I guess, with Thrawn coming. You've got to skip over all the Balin stuff for Ahsoka and get her back and ready to fight. You've got to get, all of these, if you're bringing Boba Fett and stuff, you've got to bring him back into relevancy and show why we care.
Yeah.
You've got to make Ezra someone that people recognize and care about more so than you did just having him in the last couple episodes of Ahsoka. He's got to become a standout character for a general audience. And that's just a lot to cover in a very short time.
Yeah. Do you think Cal Kestis, the guy from the Fallen Order and Fallen Survivor game, do you think he could make an appearance?
I think it's definitely possible. But again, you've then got to introduce him.
Yeah.
Get fans acquainted because not everyone will have played the video game and figure out how to tie that in. I know a few people who watched Ahsoka and were just confused because they didn't know who anyone was. And that either made them stop watching the show altogether or just like watched it but felt indifferent towards it because they had no idea what was going on. And I think that's a real issue if you're going to try and put a movie into theaters where you're going to need to make your money off a general audience and not just diehard Star Wars fans.
True. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, but it's quite exciting, I guess, on what could happen. But same as you, I'm also kind of scared because I feel like if they, I feel like this movie, it's like the main thing everyone is excited about. So if they stuff up this movie, I think, Star Wars is pretty much toast.
Yeah, I think it's a similar situation. Like everyone was excited for the return of Boba Fett, but they rushed it and it wasn't great. Everyone was excited to see Obi-Wan again. They rushed it. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
I worry that, again, we're all excited to see the conclusion of Thrawn. They're going to rush it and it's not going to come out well. Something I am cautiously optimistic with Star Wars about is they are starting to greenlight some shows all over the timeline.
Yeah.
And having some shows and movies and stuff set, 100 years before episode 1, 1,000 years before. Let's jump back and do an Andor season 2. Let's explore, I think they've announced Daisy Ridley is going to come back
Yeah.
as Rey for another movie. And I think that's more exciting to me because they can just create these standalone situations. If something happened 1,000 years before episode 1, they can do whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Because in 1,000 years, everything, you could have whatever events you need to line up to be back at episode 1. We don't know what happens to the world after episode 9, so Daisy Ridley can do anything. Whereas this Thrawn situation, we've seen episode 7, and we watched everything leading up to where we are now. They've got to both make something super epic and exciting, but that also doesn't ruin all the stuff that comes after.
Yeah, which hopefully they do pretty much what you said, which is have Thrawn win, but he then gets taken up by the Emperor or even by like General Hux or something like that, and then they step forward as this new First Order. Because in the Force Awakens film, the First Order is definitely in more power than the New Republic.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic, but also heavily pessimistic at the same time. It's a weird place to be right now.
Yeah. Well, one of the projects you did mention was hang on, I'm just finding the project now. So it is, oh no, that's a live action show. Hang on, just give me a second. It is, I've got the article right here. Oh yes, here we go. So Dawn of the Jedi movie by James Mangold.
Yes.
So basically this film is set 25,000 years before the beginning of A New Hope. So I'm not sure what the timeline was of the prequel trilogy. Was that maybe like 20 years before New Hope? 30 years?
Something like that.
Yeah. But anyways, so I'm just reading the article now. It's called Dawn of the Jedi, and it seems like it's gonna be like sort of set about like the beginnings of the Jedi, the Order, and how it all sort of came together. What's your thoughts on this project?
Yeah, I am super excited for it. I think this is exactly the type of project they should be doing to get back in the good graces of fans, in that show us a timeline that we're interested in. People, you get to say, oh, it's the founding of the Jedi in your marketing material, which is exciting for just casual fans, but then also people who are more invested in this will get to see stuff that they've read about in Legends and heard referenced and see these things come to life. I think James Mangold, pre-Indiana Jones, I would have said he was a great pick for this movie. I did not love the Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
So that him working with Disney, not the best track record, but I still think he's a great filmmaker. And so I'm optimistic for this one, and I think it could be really awesome. Introduce some really cool new characters and a new worlds, and just there again, we're back at that situation. There's no rules. We don't even know, you could develop new styles of lightsabers because they hadn't been refined to what they are now. You can, have different technology, different restraints on your characters, different force abilities. Are they more in tune with the force? Are they less in tune with the force? You can do so many interesting things, and there's just no rules at all. And so it's a great chance to just let creativity thrive and bring something truly awesome.
Yeah. And I think the old Republic was set roughly during this time period as well. Do you think they could even bring in some old Republic characters to the story?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think they can do literally whatever they want.
Yeah.
So I think if there's definitely, it's Disney, so they love their references to other properties. At the bare minimum, there will be some sort of cameos or a location that's reused, or some
Yeah,
sort of iconography that reappears that makes fans excited because they see the thing that they love.
yeah. Well, I heard a rumor about the Acolyte show, which is a Sith-based show that'll be coming
Mhm.
out next year, that Keanu Reeves was going to play Darth Revan
Oh,
and was somehow going to be a part of that show. What's your thoughts on
okay.
the Acolyte show?
Yeah, again, excited, cautiously
Yeah,
optimistic on this because they're not close enough to the main timeline to run into issues. They can get away with quite a bit, um, and just do whatever they want. I will say potentially they're going to have to pretty conclusively defeat the Sith in this. Otherwise, how did Yoda not realize they would be back?
yeah,
So you're gonna at least have to make it appear that they've been pretty comprehensively beaten. But you can, lay the seeds and say, "Hey, yeah, oh no, we've been beaten, but we hid this one thing away, and that's why it's able to be reborn in the main saga we know." Um,
yeah,
and so I think it's a great opportunity to bring new characters in and just create something new that people can fall in love with, as opposed to trying to just keep riffing on the same old stuff.
yeah, definitely. Because I think the thing about Star Wars, right, and about making all these in between shows, as I mentioned earlier, is that why didn't they show up here? Why didn't they know this or that?
Yeah.
Which is why I was originally excited about the Mandalorian because it wasn't going to have any effect on the main timeline, but obviously it is now. So I think by having projects set like years after the main story, or like thousands of years before, or even set in a new galaxy, yeah, you can do whatever you want, have any
Yeah.
kind of story you want. I think in one of the old Republic games, like Darth Malgus crashed his ship into the Jedi Temple and like just obliterated everyone.
Well, there you
But
go.
yeah, they
Sounds
could
like
literally
the
do the
past.
same thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Another project that was announced that you mentioned was the Ray film. Now,
Mhm.
there's an article that came out, so it's been officially greenlit that Daisy Ridley will be coming back to play as Ray Skywalker. Um, how do you feel about her being a Skywalker?
So dumb. I Yeah, I think one of the things I liked about episode 8 is that it was getting back to the roots of, the Force is in everything, and it's just about training and discipline and attuning yourself to it and embracing what's in you. Then the prequels came around and introduced midichlorians, which muddied that water. But then we got, Sabine suddenly has Force abilities. So it's kind of going back
Yeah,
towards that. And so, yeah, why does she need to be a Skywalker or a Palpatine or anything? Why can't she just be Rey, Qui-Gon
yeah,
was powerful, Yoda was powerful. They're not Skywalkers.
yeah.
Like I don't
Shin Batty is not a
Yeah,
Skywalker.
exactly.
Yeah,
I don't I mean I get it. Like, especially I've been going to movies a ton this year, and just every time we go to a movie that's something new and original, nobody is there. And every time we're at a movie that's based on something that exists, the theater's packed. So
yeah,
making Rey a Skywalker, for whatever reason, the general audience loves that. They recognize the Skywalker name, so they go to see it, I guess. But it makes me sad because Rey could be so awesome, and I don't think she needs to be tied down to that legacy and that situation. Just let her
yeah.
be herself.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've no issues with her being a powerful character whatsoever. I do think for a character in general, you do need growth. Like, look at the growth of Anakin or slash Darth Vader. It was probably one of the most powerful characters in the Star Wars franchise, and but he's mostly powerful because of the growth he had, because of the
Yeah.
story he had, the loss, the wins, the everything, right? Whereas with Rey, it was kind of the opposite, where she had no growth, she had no story, but she's just really powerful. So why is
Yeah.
she powerful?
I think
That's
it partially also struggles, like, we fill in a lot of mental gaps with the prequels, and that in episode 1, Anakin suddenly be a phenomenal pod racer and wins the race and blows up the Federation or the Trade Federation, like
Yeah.
their ship and stuff. And we don't really bat an eye because, yeah, he's super powerful. He's Anakin. And then there's a big gap. And then we come back for episode 2. So, of course, he's powerful in that. He must have trained.
Yeah.
He's been doing stuff. Whereas it's not exciting if Rey never does anything powerful. But also because those movies are set right after each other, there's no time for her to grow.
Yeah.
And then also like the original trilogy is pretty quick after each other, and Luke progresses pretty quickly, but also mostly because of limitations on CGI and what they could do back in the 70s and 80s. He could never be that powerful because all the Force was then was pushing some objects here and there and kind of knowing the future 10 seconds ahead of you. Whereas now it's like, well, we've seen the prequels and they're able to do triple backflips and pull entire ships down out of the sky. Why is it exciting if Rey can't do any of that? We've got to make her do something cool.
Yeah.
But they've then, you rush it because she had no time in between episodes to learn to do cool things.
Yeah.
So.
I'm excited to see what they do with the character. So it's been kind of given an unofficial title called the New Beginning, and the story is basically of her starting a official Jedi Order. But
Again?
Everett, here's the issue. Everyone keeps trying to start these bloody orders, and some kids just gonna have a bad nightmare. You're gonna want to kill them, and then they become the next big villain.
Yeah. I think another interesting thing is the original trilogy is kind of about reestablishing the Jedi, but also Luke rejects his training with Yoda and goes his own way.
Yeah.
And gets to where he is. The prequel trilogy is all about how awful the Jedi Order was and how they were so caught up in bureaucracy and their own arrogance that they led to the downfall of the entire galaxy. Why are we so? I know it's because Jedi is a cool word that everybody knows and you can throw on all your marketing, but within the world of the show, why are we still stuck on this Jedi thing? Like, try and if they were really being brave and strong, she might try and do some teaching or whatever to some people, but not recreate the Jedi Order. She would take it forward and move it into something new.
Yeah, and I feel like what Balin said he was going to do with this potential new order or new power that he seeks, I find is way more interesting than just starting a new order, because it's like, is he potentially going to do a thing of like Dark Jedi, for example, because he is technically a Dark Jedi, and then or the whole Abeloth thing that I mentioned, or if he goes. I think someone had a theory on Twitter that I saw where he's just going to try and destroy the Force altogether. Because I know that happened one point in Legends comics. Someone tried to do that, which that could be possible. But yeah, people got to stop making new Jedi orders, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little played out at this point. I think if you're going to do a Rey thing, it should just be she gets one apprentice who we can connect to and enjoy, and you watch her realize and struggle training someone and realize, not everyone is suddenly powerful, or like, they go off on adventures and she learns that she won't win every time and their struggle, and make her develop that way.
Because I guess that issue I have as well is because with every story you've got to have some kind of bad guy, some kind of action. Who is the villain of the movie going to be? Because Kylo Ren's dead, Emperor is officially dead, the First Order's kind of gone, all the Star Destroyers with the Death Star weapons are gone.
Are the Knights of Ren still out there?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially,
it could be a hunting the last of the Knights of Ren. She takes on an apprentice, and the two of them journey across the galaxy hunting down the Knights of Ren.
Maybe that could be quite cool.
That could be cool. But I mean, they were the biggest waste in the sequel trilogy. They're so cool, and they look so awesome, and they literally do nothing the whole series. So I think giving them some play could be exciting and show that they are actually, really powerful, or just at least the fact that there's a bunch of them proves to be a match for Rey.
Yeah. What's another show that's coming out? It is Skeleton Crew. Have you heard about
Yep.
Skeleton Crew?
Isn't that Jude Law, right?
Yes. So basically, it's a 8 episode live action show, which will star Jude Law as a new Jedi in the Mandoverse timeline, guiding a group of young children who've become lost in the galaxy and are searching for their way home.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it at this point to say one way or the other. It's yet another Jedi that's somehow survived and not been involved in the original trilogy, but is suddenly here in the Mando timeline, which is whatever. They're doing it a lot.
Yeah.
And so I guess I could just let that go and move on. And the other thing is, if you're going to introduce this and it's in the Mando timeline, they're going to somehow be involved with Thrawn, because it's that timeline. And if you're introducing a new Jedi, why wouldn't he help in that? But that's yet another group of characters we've got to get to know and understand, and then introduce to the whole team and figure out their dynamic before we get to our one movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, it might be awesome on its own, but I think it introduces a lot of issues for the greater scope of what they're doing right now than it could be worth.
I think this could be a very interesting story if it was set after Order 66. Like in the Kenobi show, they set up that Quinn and Voss had made that tunnel as a way for younglings to potentially escape the Empire on that planet. We saw that rogue Jedi get hanged by the stomach, for being found. And I feel like it's an interesting concept, but during the Mandoverse timeline, it's like, why are you hiding kids? That's a wee bit sketchy.
Yeah, I would definitely agree it should be set either between, like, just after Order 66, or do like what they did with the last season of Clone Wars, set it during Order 66, and Jude Law is trying to save these kids that are out there alone, and they have to try and get somewhere and evade the clones and Inquisitors or whatever you want to send after them. And that could have been, a lot of tension, because we know odds are they end up dying.
Yeah.
And so it would be very, very intense and very emotionally resonant, I think. But the issue is, they want to stick with this 5 years after Return of the Jedi timeline. They're obsessed with it.
Yeah. I mean, something that they could do, but then again, this would have to be set after the whole Heir to the Empire film, is that maybe they come across Luke's academy, right? But then end of the series, they all die to the First Order.
Yeah.
Because I have a theory that Grogu and Jason, Hera's son, are in that camp when Kylo kills everyone.
Okay.
And that's why they aren't in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, that could be. It could also be they end up being the Knights of Ren. These kids.
True.
He's out there trying to save them and rescue them or whatever, and they end up he fails, and they get captured and tortured and turned into the Knights of Ren. And then we learn a bit of their backstory, and then they can show up in the Rey movie.
Yeah.
And then it links together nicely.
I mean, I'd have to have a look what the Knights of Ren look like, but if there's definitely Knights of Ren that looks like a tall assassin droid, then we could definitely say that is Grogu.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it's just using the Force to see everything.
That would be the best and worst reveal if, like, the Knights of Ren, one of them pulls off their helmet and it's just Grogu piloting this body.
Just spamming yes.
That was so annoying.
That was. Yeah. There's also a Lando.
Yeah.
Well, it was originally meant to be a show, but it's been turned into a movie, kind of about his time, as the smuggler, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and the Glover brothers are developing it.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, again, if you're bringing people who are passionate about the project and are creative, and you're willing to actually just let them make a show about a smuggler smuggling things, it could be really good and really fun. I think
Yeah.
the issue would be if they try and start tying it into something or have a big bad who's more than just a crime lord, or, somehow involve lightsabers and action and stuff that's just not relevant to that story. I think they struggled with that with the Han Solo TV show,
Mm.
in that they wanted these great high stakes, but they also knew they couldn't, and it felt
Yeah.
awkward. Whereas I think they really figured it out with Andor, in creating a more character based drama without the lightsaber action, just doing heists and small level crime, but still making it exciting and intense and dramatic because it's important to these characters as opposed
Yeah.
to important to the greater timeline. And I think if they let them make a smuggling show where it's important that the smugglers are safe and succeed in their smuggling thing, then cool, it's going to be awesome. If they create a smuggling show that's somehow smuggling some great secret of the empire back to the rebellion and they're all actually heroes and good people and whatever, it's going to be bad.
Well, something that they've teased at the end of the Han Solo film was Darth Maul,
Mhm.
right? He's still quite big in his whole criminal empire that we saw him establish at the beginning of, well, kind of during the Clone Wars and especially at the start of Clone Wars season 7. I think that potentially a story they could make with the show is potentially him. Well, maybe not Han, because when I think about it, Han Solo in New Hope, he doesn't believe in the Force, he doesn't believe in lightsabers or anything. So maybe have him join Lando against Darth Maul probably won't make sense canon
Yeah.
wise, but you could definitely do something of Lando's criminal empire against Darth Maul's, because in Rebels we see Darth Maul's just nothing once
Yeah.
again, So maybe that's how he goes from having this big grand criminal empire to just absolutely nothing in Rebels.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that could be an interesting sequence of events that like is dramatic to these characters, but uh, isn't necessarily going to ruin the whole overall timeline. I think yeah, if you have it where he like destroys or cheats Darth Maul in such a way that Darth Maul is in this kind of weakened state, lost his criminal empire and stuff. But he also still fears Darth Maul, and that's why he runs away to Bespin and
Yeah,
becomes just, oh yeah, I'm just here because it's fun. It's like, no, I'm actually absolutely terrified for my life and have no idea that Darth Maul died
yeah,
again.
because it would make sense. Because when Darth Vader even shows up, like he immediately submits to him and sells his close friend Han over, right?
Yeah,
And it makes sense because if he encountered Darth Maul and potentially gets the shit kicked out of him, maybe that's why he immediately hands everything over to Darth Vader, because he knows that
yeah,
like nah, like there's no way we're going to survive this.
yeah. That'd make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, so yeah, it could potentially go in a good way, but I
Yeah.
think it's Disney. There's
Yeah, if they can
that's the only
stop
thing.
meddling with everything, I think they've got the world and the characters and stuff in place. Stop trying to mess with everything and connect everything to this grand single story. Let it
Yeah,
be individual stories within this world.
if it was maybe like mid 2000s Disney, I would have quite a good faith, because you can almost make Lando as like a Jack Sparrow
Yeah.
type character, someone who is really sly, really charming, and can easily talk his way out of things, because that's basically the character he's established as. But I feel like with recent Disney, even with some of the shows, like I was catching up with my niece at one point, and she was just watching like just a random Disney show, and I was thinking, what on earth is this? Like, it's just rubbish. Like even some of my childhood favorite films that were done by Disney, like Monsters, no, that's done by Pixar, I think. Sometimes I've gone back and rewatched them just for nostalgia, and it still holds up.
Yeah.
It's
No,
still
for
fun to
sure.
watch. Yeah,
There's something, and it might be Netflix's fault, where content for the sake of content has won out over
mm,
quality content. And so the beauty of Netflix and the reason everyone subscribed is not because they had 8 million amazing shows, it's because they had 8 million shows to watch. So when you didn't know what to watch, you went to Netflix.
Yeah.
And now people like Disney are trying to catch up, and they're like, oh, people don't want good shows. They just want another show to watch. And so we
Yeah.
finished our one show. Let's just get out another one instead of making good ones. And you're never going to just have the library and catalog of a Netflix or, you know, an Amazon who've been doing this for years and years. So stick to what you're good at and make good movies and good
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah, exactly. There's also Tales of Jedi Season 2. So there's an article that came out recently where Baylan Skoll was going to get a couple episodes about his time during Order 66. What's your
Yeah, I
thoughts on
heard that. I hope so.
Yeah. I think it'd be quite interesting on because I personally love a lot of Order 66 stories. There was a comic book I read. It's very similar to this one, where it's like these sort of legendsy comic books here, where except it was about Darth Vader and his story of hunting down
Okay.
like ex Jedi and whatnot. There's a whole story with Plo Koon's niece, which is probably the best Star Wars story I've ever seen in my life, where she chops Darth Vader in half. yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like Plo Koon has a niece. Okay,
sure.
Yeah, it's so funny, but I feel like you could almost do a series based on that, right? Like an Order 66 story about Jedi and clone troopers, similar to what they're doing with the Bad Batch, but just have one episode about a completely different character.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've said multiple times already in this podcast, I'm all for this Tales of the Jedi single standalone. Let's just go explore a moment in this character's backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
There's another show, Star Wars Visions. Now, you quite like Star Wars Visions, eh?
Yes, I don't love 90% of the episodes, but I love that it exists. And I can accept that not every episode is made for me, and not every episode is going to be similar quality, because that's the point. They're a wide variety of stories by a wide variety of creators, all different styles, all different stories. Throw in these random characters who are crazy and weird and do whatever you want for 10 minutes and just see what comes out. And I think that's awesome. That's the beauty of Star Wars. That's where, you know, you get all these fun legend stuff that people were making for years, and fan films and all of this stuff. It's just like, it's such a rich world and such a fun thing to think about and create your own version of events and stories. And I love that they're letting people just do whatever they want. Like, there's a whole episode that's just about a kid who wants to be a rock star, about him becoming playing in a band for Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, wow.
It's dumb. It's awful. It's made for 4-year-olds, but I'm glad that it's out there for those 4-year-olds who like it. And, you know, you don't get that anywhere else in Star Wars. And so, yeah, 90% of the episodes are not for me, but I love that they're just letting people do whatever they want.
Yeah. I feel like Star Wars Visions, and there's another Star Wars show called Young Jedi Adventures. Have you seen of that or heard of that?
I know of it. I have not seen any of it, because that one's very much not for me.
that one's definitely meant for kids. The only thing I like about it is all the Anakin memes that were made of it. It's like I'll just keep randomly seeing on TikTok and Instagram just any scene of just these young kids doing something, and then it just cuts to Anakin igniting his lightsaber.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That's the only thing I know about Young Jedi Adventures. Which,
Okay.
if there's an episode of Anakin, I will watch that. But if there's not, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's another important thing about Star Wars, is it's such a big brand now that it is for everyone. You need your Andor character dramas. You need your little children's animated show that lets a 5-year-old fall in love with the idea of Star Wars.
Yeah,
you know,
but I love that it's actually meant for kids, unlike the Clone Wars, where it says that it's meant for kids, but it's very clearly.
You get some episodes that are just like Jar Jar being stupid, and it's like, haha, this definitely is okay for a 4-year-old. And then you get like worms possessing people and reanimating corpses and
yeah,
all this horrible stuff.
I saw a meme actually this morning where it was Star Wars meant for kids, and it's just Savage Press just throwing this lightsaber, decapitating all the Pikes heads.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so funny. And here's a big one, being such a big Andor fan. Andor season 2. So the article says, after what many regarded to be Star Wars' best Disney Plus season, Tony Gilroy will return with Andor season 2 next year in 2024. The sophomore season was announced to be released in August. However, because of the strike, it could be premiered to a later date or even 2025. Most of the Andor cast is expected to return for the 12-episode second season. They'll span 4 years and run up to Cassian's debut of Rogue One. Each of the season's 3-episode blocks will seemingly cover another year in Rebels' life heading towards its inevitable demise.
Yeah.
Are you pumped?
Obviously, I'm excited for it. I also think originally they were going to do like 4 seasons, 1 for each year. And then Diego Luna was like, I'm not doing 4 seasons of the same thing. So they're okay, we'll do 3 seasons. And now it's 2 seasons. And I'm very happy about that because I don't think you need to stretch that plot across. There's enough story there that you could if you wanted to, but I think it's better off that just cap it. We get a second season. That's it. 3 episodes per year leading through the 4 years up to Rogue One. And we can just kind of watch his development to getting to where he is. And I think it's also good in that it's a TV show that is on Disney Plus, but is clearly not marketed for children. And so I think we might finally get the promise of Rogue One, of, Star Wars, but dark and gritty, in that, he talks about doing terrible things for the rebellion, and you see him shoot one guy in the back, and then 5 minutes later, he's instantly just a lovable hero who does the right thing every time. And I think this show, they did a good enough job with season 1, showing that this is not your general audience Star Wars. This is for a slightly older Star Wars crowd. You can actually start really delving into the things that a rebellion would do that are in the gray area, or even just straight up like a bad thing to do, but necessary for the rebellion.
Yeah, definitely, because definitely a lot of the Empire's whole propaganda was the rebellion are all these horrible, monstrous type people who'll do like quite literally anything. But I feel like we haven't seen that yet because we've always seen them in the good light. So I hope that Andor season 2 will dive into like what you said, like the real dark and gritty stuff of the rebellion. Potentially they have to sacrifice one another or something, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I believe and the Bad Batch season 3. So I believe this is the final season, and it's going to have Finnick Chan, Captain Rex, Commander Wolf, and more to all pop in for another 16 episode season.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what the story is, but I will be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if I'll be able to watch it with Omega.
Yeah.
If they kill off Omega, I'll start watching from there.
I have not finished season 2. I only got a couple episodes. I don't even know if I actually finished season 1, now that I think about it. I love the Bad Batch. I hate Omega. And so it wasn't worth it to me to watch. And I hope that it gets really good reviews and that people are like, oh no, they fixed the Omega issue, whether she dies or just stops being annoying. And then maybe I'll power through the other stuff just to catch up, or maybe just watch a YouTube recap.
Because I stopped watching, I think it was like mid-season 1. It was where they had encountered Cad Bane, but Omega escaped Cad Bane. I was like, come on, Disney.
Yeah.
Like, don't do this to Cad Bane.
Disney have not done Cad Bane any justice.
No, I feel like they're like, here's a really cool, iconic character, and let's just make them terrible. Really clumsy, really foolish, whatnot, and just loses to the smallest things. But Same time, I will admit, Cad Bane, he one-shot Boba Fett to the ground, and he's wearing Mandalorian armor. So, yeah, it is one slightly badass moment with Disney. Slightly, yeah. But yeah, that's all the shows and projects that have been announced to this day of coming out. Which project are you most excited to see?
I think it's a mix between Andor Season 2 and the James Mangold movie set way back. I think that has the potential to just be really original and fun.
Yeah, I think yeah, no, you're completely right. I think the originality of it and the uniqueness of it is what's going to be most of the hype, I feel like, going into the film. But I will admit, this could be recency bias, but I'm really excited to see what they do with Ahsoka Season 2 and also this Heir to the Empire film, because I got to know what happens to my future wife, Everett. You are invited to the wedding if it ever happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like, I feel like you've watched me grow. You've seen me go from being married to a Bigfoot to now a human that's in a completely different universe and galaxy.
Yeah, I don't know which is more realistic, but
but
I'm happy
nonetheless,
for you either way.
You'll be there with a tall glass of chocolate milk, right?
I will, of course.
I still have that great memory of I was trying to organize Max's shoot.
Oh boy!
And I said, Everett, here's my card. Go buy me a chocolate milk at the cafe that was just around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you did. That's how I knew that you're a real friend.
Of course, anytime. I'll fly all the way over.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, that does bring us to the end of our podcast tonight. Everett, you run a podcast, The Den of Nerds. Would you like
Nerd and Normie?
Nerd and Normie. Sorry, my bad. I'm not sure where the Den of Nerds came from, but yeah, give us a 2-hour explanation.
Yeah, 2 hours. We'll double our runtime here.
yeah.
No, my fiance Emerald and I do a podcast, The Nerd and Normie. As you've seen, I've just talked about Star Wars for 2 hours and went to film school. I am the nerd, and she is just a casual movie goer. And we watch 2 movies a week. We each get to pick one, and then we talk about them. We recently did Five Nights at Freddy's and Anatomy of a Fall, 2 wildly different movies, and we disagreed on both of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Five Nights at Freddy's, way more her thing. Anatomy of a Fall, it's a French drama, won the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival, much more my kind of thing.
And let me guess, you chose to watch Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. That was definitely my choice.
Yeah, at some point we do have to do Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we'll have to find a week where there's nothing too exciting coming out. I know the next couple weeks we've already got our movies picked, but we'll find a time for sure.
Well, I know that this could be a perfect Valentine's. I'm happy to pay to pay for you guys tickets, but next Valentine's of 2024, Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2, the sequel, is going to hit cinemas. So you know what? I'll say this live on podcast. I will purchase you and Emerald's tickets to go watch this movie on Valentine's Day.
Okay. All right. I'll hold you to that.
Yes, do. Please do. It'll be the best thing I've ever done for you. And
it'll be a thing that you have done. I will agree with that.
for your wedding, I'm actually to bring hard copies of the film as well.
Wow. That's top of our registry.
But where can people find your podcast?
Yep, we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, most other podcast platforms. We also have a YouTube channel, the Nerd and Normie Podcast, and you can find us there. We're also on Instagram and TikTok at Nerd and Normie.
Yes, and I highly recommend checking out their content. I will be perfectly honest, I don't listen to all of them, but the movies I have seen, I always go and listen to those, and I always really enjoy your coverage, even though
Thank you.
I always disagree with what you have to say.
That's generally the case.
Yeah. But Everett, thank you so much for coming on. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. And yeah, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Yes, and if you are new to the channel, everyone, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. We are wanting to do more scripted television because at the moment we're doing Survivor UK, The Challenge, Traders Canada, and many other reality shows. Amazing Race Australia, I believe, is still going on. So if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But until then, I will see you next time. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.